Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar for lying in bed is safe or is it? Rethinking nighttime positioning is part of harm reduction. My name is Adele and I'm part of the team at A1 Momentum. So you're all very welcome to be here. Thank you for joining us. Today we have Simple Stuff Works CEO Sarah Clayton. And Norma's going to do a bit more of an introduction for in a minute. But I just wanted to welcome you all and just let you know that the webinar today will be recorded and then it will be sent out in a post-webinar email to yourselves. And if you know anyone today that hasn't been able to attend, it will also be a link to the recording will also be sent out to anyone who hasn't been able to attend also. So please let them know that. If for any reason you have to nip off or have to leave early, again, you'll receive the recording. So please don't be worrying too much about that. We're really happy that you've joined us today, and we will have a Q&A at the end with Sarah. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box or in the chat, as she'd already said. So yeah, we're just really glad that you're with us today, and I will hand over to Norma, who'll do a quick introduction of Sarah today.
Thank you so much, Adele. Yeah, and I'm delighted to welcome Sarah Clayton today. So it's thanks to Sarah that I had my light bulb moment 15 years ago in realising that as an OT, I needed to look at lying positioning and therapeutic lying positioning, which has a direct implication for moving and handling and quality of life. So Sarah is indeed a leading expert in postural care. She has over 25 years of experience. She is trained and works with many clinicians, and she has contributed to pioneering research in the field, coming from her parents who really are, had invented and created so many beneficial aspects of 24-hour postural care. She has supported countless families as a specialist in body symmetry and nighttime positioning. So alongside her professional work, I will say that Sarah also brings a deeply personal perspective as a mother of four, including her eldest daughter, beautiful daughter who lives with complex brain injury and learning disability. So really her combination of that lived experience, along with her extensive experience in understanding body shape, protection of body shape, and lying specifically protection of body shape, she has a practical approach to improving quality of life through postural care and improving quality of life. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Genuinely, thank you for having me. It's so lovely to be a part of these events, connecting people who are really passionate about, their area of expertise, but also just passionate about people and working with organisations where that kind of shines through, like organisations, such as Seating Matters and A1 Momentum, that have got people right at the heart of everything that they do. Are we ready for a PowerPoint? I think we all have spent long enough without a PowerPoint, so we're going to take a quick look. Hopefully, Norma, can you tell me if you can see my screen?
Or can somebody? I can see that.
Yes,
please. Thanks. Thank you.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you. Right. Okay. So we're gonna belt through this, and what I don't want you to worry about writing anything down. I don't want it, because you can look at the recording, and I'm going to send a resource sheet out as well as a bit of a cheat sheet for clinicians afterwards. So it would be great if we could just relax and have a think about some of this stuff and what we all could bring to make outcomes a little better for people who are not safe when they're lying in bed. So are people safe in bed? Most of us, yeah, we are. Some of us, absolutely not. And what we're thinking about today is predictable harm, objective outcome measures, and reasonable risk. So if we take a quick look, Norma introduced me there. people say, like, like, how long have you done this? I was 50 about 2 weeks ago, and so probably about 50 years. So my mum was she calls herself a recovering physiotherapist, and my dad, there they are. Look, there's my mum, there's my dad, there's me. This is Anna Goldsmith, who I love working with every single day, and this is me in the best socks in the world. I still have socks like that. I think everybody should have socks like that. I've been around a really long time, and I've been working in this field for a really long time. So the first piece of work that I had published was the Mansfield Project back in the year 2000. So I work with loads of different organisations. I've been self-employed since 2004. So I get to work with whoever I want to work with, and I get to say whatever I want to say, because ultimately I don't have a boss, which is always handy, isn't it? But yeah, like Norma said, probably more importantly, this is my daughter, Abby. She lives with a complex brain injury and learning disability. She was 6 years old when she was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and she was 9 when she had a very significant stroke. She's now 24, and we are working really hard to get her moved into her own home with a 24/7 care team and all of those things. But one of the things, the reason I share this is not just because she's absolutely gorgeous. We never went to Vegas, by the way. It's a green screen. No, we've absolutely not. But one of the things I wanted to share was just when I just think about Abby and I think about risk, these are just some of the risks that Abby faces. And this is the kind of mitigation. These are the steps that are in place, the things that we all do to keep Abby safe, because I don't know many people who can take your day from being completely normal to absolute chaos as quick as my girl can, because of the complexity of her healthcare needs. And all I wanted to share really was that every single one of these on its own is a big risk for her. When you put them all together, it's really, really tricky. And none of these risks kind of outweigh the other, and they all feed into one another. So if she's particularly tired, then her falls risk increases. If she is distressed, then her seizure activity increases. They all just mush together, and that's hard. And one of the things that's difficult about people who what's difficult for you supporting somebody that's complicated is that yours won't be the only area that people are trying to prioritize. Everybody thinks their area is the thing that should be prioritized. And there's loads of work around this. So Rachel Wright does some fabulous work looking at the number of people. She worked out, this is on YouTube, she worked out how many people were involved in her son's care. It's over 80. That level of complexity in itself brings risk. She's written a wonderful chapter in a book around safe decision making and shared decision making, which is well worth taking a look, and I will pop it into the resource file. So we know that people face lots of different risks, and we know that all of those different elements kind of blur the boundaries between one another. And it's very, very difficult because not all of us have the position of authority that I do as Abby's mum to have an oversight over all of those different risks. The other thing that we know, so this is from a paper from a few years ago now, but the other thing we know is that within postural care services, knowledge within the MDT and when to refer for postural care provision is very limited. So what often happens is, because the person that's first in contact with that individual may not understand how to or why they should be referring on to postural care services, very often the referrals that come in are quite late, and we are dealing with people who have already developed changes in their body shape. So what we need to think about is having a really clear idea about who is and who isn't safe in bed. So we could think about children, we could think about older adults, and I'm not here today to give you lots and lots of information about children or about older adults. There are people out there who do the most phenomenal work in these areas. So Mindy Silver at Clinical Excellence Online, if children are your area of interest is around children and young people like Yoda Clerk, absolutely phenomenal people who are out there. That's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to help you to see the link between moving and handling and postural care, particularly in bed. So when we think about risk factors, very often we think about movement as the key risk factor, and it is a huge problem if someone finds it difficult to change position independently. But there are also other risk factors that come into play. And a key thing is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have these risk factors for a very long period of time. So one of the challenges that we see is that someone within a very short period of time, say if they have experienced a stroke perhaps, or a brain injury, it may be that there is a period of time where they have a very, very high risk profile when it comes to being unsupported in bed, but that with rehab and with recovery, those risk factors may well diminish. So one of the challenges is that a person might need support in bed for a short period of time. And what we don't want to do is to see people miss that opportunity and for that to impact the level of recovery or their rehab. So we need to move away from this idea that if we have supported lying, it's only for those people who face lifelong risk. There will also be people like my daughter who for periods of time have been absolutely immobile and have needed supported lying. She is now much more mobile. She now no longer needs supported lying. So why protect body shape? And that's essentially what supported lying is all about. It's about protection of symmetry. And this is just a really brief, the reason that we have to protect body shape is because the person's body, if we don't, then it has an impact in loads of different places, only one of which is that their moving and handling needs become much, much more complex. They also probably become much more expensive. All right. So if the humanitarian argument doesn't do it for you, then maybe the economic argument will do. But what we do know from lots of different places, and there's I mean, the research is growing with regards to protection of body shape and avoidance of asymmetry development. And we can look at children and we can look at adults. This is a great paper that came out 2024, predominant thigh posture being one of the driving forces behind hip dislocation for children and young adults. So predominant thigh posture, where you're sitting, where you're standing, but most importantly, where you're lying, it's absolutely huge. And so sometimes people get caught up in the idea that there's a lack of evidence. There is evidence, and there's also common sense, which come into play. So that isn't a barrier to provision of supported lying. It shouldn't be a barrier any longer. This is simply to show, and if you're thinking, well, I don't work with children, that's absolutely fine. We could use this probably same shaped graph if we were to put across the bottom levels of mobility and risk of pressure injury. So the more difficulty a person has with changing their own position, the more likely it is that they're going to experience secondary complications that make life even harder. And the last thing really to think about when we're thinking about this sort of risk of development of asymmetry is that, and I'm going to come on to talk about this a little bit more, but what we're looking at here in this image is a very predictable pattern of distortion that's associated with prone lying. So this individual, late teens, here we're in the late 20s, and here we're in the late 30s. So what begins as a relatively straightforward pattern associated with the lying position and highly predictable in terms of where this person is going ends up as a complication that isn't just devastating for the person, it then makes every single aspect of their care much, much more complicated. Be that moving and handling, be it communication, be it nutrition, be it breathing, be it everything is much, much more complicated. So if we think of it, I always talk with families about the idea that the kind of real foundation stones of a person's well-being, if they find it very difficult to move themselves, the real key foundations are a wheelchair that fits and is comfortable, alternative seating, so you've somewhere to go where you're protected if you're not using your wheelchair, and supported lying. And those three are like the pillars upon which everything else gets built. And you know that I wrote a thing a while ago about the way you lie is the way you sit, and the way you sit often dictates what you can do, where you can go, and the extent to which you can participate. So it doesn't really matter kind of what your thing is, whether it's moving and handling, whether it's communication. If you go back far enough, what you will find is the seeds of success for your thing are probably in sitting and lying. And if they're not right, then everything that's built upon that is going to be wobbly, and it won't be as effective as it could be. So 24-hour postural care is talked about a lot. And when we think about the key parts that make up 24-hour postural care, the bits that I'm really interested in are the ones that are in red. So lying during the daytime, lying during the night, and any sort of lying equipment that might be used. And we need to think of all of these things together, because if one part falls down, everything else becomes unstable. And what we can do is we can think of various different ways that we can identify people. So this is the paper that I wrote back in the year 2000, the Mansfield Project. And the Mansfield checklist is used by lots of different services to identify people that may be at risk. So I wrote it so that anybody could fill this in. So be it a parent, be it a teaching assistant, you know, a healthcare assistant, a nurse, anyone can be identifying people that they're a little bit worried about when it comes to their supported lying. And the key thing, once we've identified someone, is that we actually do something with that information. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to take a look at where is the person, what's the position in which they're spending their time, and for how long are they spending time in that position. And we can then start to link what's important for somebody to what's important to somebody, because I know that you know, if getting to watch, you know, if getting to the cinema in your chair is really important to you, then this lying position becomes very important for you. And these two, the lying position and the seated position, I always talk to families about the idea that they are like jigsaw puzzles. So they're jigsaw pieces that have to fit together. And if they don't fit together, then the lying position, unfortunately, is going to be the one that wins, because it's the blueprint for the seated position. So if you're facing challenges in seating and you're not considering lying, then you will always be playing catch up in the seated position. You have to get these two working together, which can be really challenging. You know, I'm at the end of this presentation, it's like, so there you go, go and sort that out then. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's about this very considered approach. If there is a problem in seating, we calmly, methodically need to work out where does it come from and consider the lying position. So we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on this, but we're just going to think about our language and how, if we're all using consistent descriptors, it can be very, very helpful to be talking with your nursing colleagues, your physio colleagues, your OT colleagues, whoever it is. If we're using the consistent language, it's incredibly helpful. One of the less helpful things potentially is this top level descriptor, whether somebody is in supine, side lying or prone. And the reason it's not really hugely helpful, there's a couple of things it's helpful for. But basically, if these are unsupported, so unsupported supine, unsupported side lying, prone is an absolute nightmare. There isn't, I was going to say unsupported prone, but so prone. These on their own, they're unsupported, they're all destructive. Okay, so we see patterns of distortion in unsupported supine just as much as we see in unsupported side lying. They're slightly different patterns, but the one thing it does give you, if someone is really desperate to be in prone, what that can do is it can give you an idea that they really struggle with regards to potentially sensory processing and the need for compression and to know where they are in space. So that's really helpful. If someone really, really does want to sleep in prone, it gives us a clue as to what might be successful if we're introducing supported lying, in that we might need some weight and all those sorts of things. Then we think about the direction to which the person wind sweeps. And then we think about the rotation that we're looking at in the chest, whether it's clockwise or anti-clockwise. And we're always looking, so it's to the person's or the child's left or right for wind sweeping. Sadly, it's from our clockwise, anti-clockwise, looking from the foot of the bed. And sometimes people have temper tantrums. Sorry, but that's how it is. We just have to crack on with it. So this paper I wrote with my lovely dad, and it was published in 2010. And what we did is we developed this sternospinal line model, having met hundreds of people and seen the same patterns of distortion over and over and over. We wanted to develop a model that is predictive. So we can take, rather than waiting for distortion to present itself, we wanted to look at the root cause, look at the person's habitual lying posture, and develop a model that clinicians can learn and use to predict what's likely to happen. So it's this sternospinal line model. And all we do is we think about the chest like a tower. And when a person lies down, their pelvis should be level relative to the horizontal, and their sternum should be central. And what we're able to do once we've got a grip of that model in our head is we can work out whether the habitual lying postures, the postures that the person is spending lots of time in, support this model of symmetry, or the person's ending up moving away from that model of symmetry. And wind sweeping is a classic example of where we would be moving away from that model. And it occurs in all unsupported lying positions, and it is a whole body phenomenon. So when you, if you want to see me cross, then you'll just say to me, the person's wind sweeping, I just want something for their legs, and I just have to walk away. So it's a whole body situation, isn't it? If the legs are going one way, the pelvis goes in the opposite direction. The chest in classic wind sweeping will be following the legs. So if it's a whole body problem, we need to look at a whole body solution. And we know that these patterns, this is the predictability. And again, we're not going into this in masses of detail, but what we know is that if somebody is wind sweeping to their left, we can expect a particular direction of chest rotation, and to the right, the opposite direction. So wind sweeping is about the legs falling to, being forced to, or being drawn to the person's left or right. The pelvis goes in the opposite direction, chest follows the legs. Highly predictable, and we can pick it up really early. Again, when we think about, and this is just to really briefly run through, just so that you know that there's something that sits behind this predictability. Again, thinking about the chest like a tower, when we look at rotation, we're thinking about the rib flares are relatively helpful, but what's much more consistent and much more reliable is the position of the sternum. So what we're looking for are structural changes that are coming about as a result of the person's lying posture. And when we link those two together, what we're able to do is then put in place corrective strategies. So we could talk about clockwise rotation, and this is what it would look like in life. In children and young people, we see the sternum moving towards the person's left arm. Anti-clockwise, the other way. What's the link to seating? The link to seating is that if someone has anti-clockwise rotation, you tend to see a rib flare here. You will see a rib distortion here and the shoulder blade protruding. If your seating solution is not accommodating these changes, then the person will be forced to lean to their right, because if the back of the chair is too flat, if it's not able to conform to this distortion that we start to see here, then we end up in a really, it's like pressing fast forward, because the rotation will be coming in lying. If that's not picked up and the person's seating isn't suitably adapted to this change, then not only will we see this change in lying, but in seating we'll also see them leaning. And then we start to really struggle to find periods of time in the day where that pattern is not being reinforced. So what starts what starts small just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and becomes much, much more difficult to address. If we are protecting symmetry, it's a far easier place to be than if we're trying to correct asymmetry. Okay, so if we were to take this person's lying position, this looks like a relatively comfortable position for somebody to sleep in. And at this point, it may be that they're moving and handling these are relatively straightforward. But what we're thinking about is not just today. We're thinking about what happens next week, what happens next month, what happens in 5 years' time. We can see that she's windswept to her right. And if I was on Zoom, I'd be able to do it. But because I'm not on Zoom, I don't want to touch anything, because I'll probably just end up leaving the entire meeting if I was to try to annotate this. But basically, we have got her legs going over to her right, her pelvis in the opposite direction. The chest is following the legs. So when you analyze this lying position, it helps you to work out what the corrective therapeutic strategy will be. If we don't get on top of this lying position, and it's a really common lying position, if we don't get on top of this, then we know what the predictable harm will be. And once you've got your head around it, you cannot get away from analysing lying positions. So this was, Abby wanted to go to Paris. We went to Paris because whatever Abby says she wants to do, that's what we do. And this statue was in the Louvre. She's rather fabulous, isn't she? Those of you that know this statue, know that she's very much a they rather than a he or a she. So we can analyse the position. From the lying position, you can imagine what would happen to their seated posture. You can imagine what would happen in terms of moving and handling. All of these things, it's so predictable. I mean, I have been known to analyse the lying position of my dog. Anyway, so then we can start to see, well, if we understand the pattern, we all know individuals, or many of us who have worked in this field for a long time, unfortunately, know people and still know people that this happens to, who end up with their rib on their pelvis. Now, if our chest is not compressed and rotated, we should not be able to get our ribs in contact with our pelvis. This is a really difficult, this is a really challenging distortion of body shape for moving and handling, for seating, for lying. It very much is at the sharp end, if you like, of postural asymmetry. And it comes about because of compression and rotation. Only when the chest is compressed and rotated do we end up with rib on pelvis. So the answer to this particular pattern of distortion is not lateral. It may be lateral in seating, because you are looking at a completely different plane in seating. It is absolutely not a corrective strategy in lying. So that's really frustrating, because we have known this stuff for a very, very long time, and we know the effective interventions. So one of the things that's happening more and more is people are starting to think about how do we monitor the efficacy of these positioning strategies and positioning equipment that's going into people's beds. And we do this in all other aspects of healthcare. So why on earth would we not do this when it comes to postural care? So we know what typical looks like. We know what the risk factors are. We can objectively measure body symmetry, both of movement and of structure, and we can monitor whether what we're doing is effective to protect an individual. So long before we see structural asymmetry, we will see asymmetry of movement. So this young woman, who now is a little bit older, this is my youngest. She wouldn't do this for me now. She's nearly 14. There's not enough money in the world that would make her do this for me now. I feel the pain of everybody on this call who's got teenagers. Beautiful, typical movement, hasn't she? If she spends time in a position if she spends time in a windswept position like this, the very first thing that we will start to see is that her legs will fall more easily to that side and her pelvis will not rotate as high. So what we're able to do is we're able to monitor her movement, and you don't have to. We do this numerically. We do this with measuring kit and a full validated procedure that's been around since 1992 and is validated both for children and adults. If you don't have access to that, that's not a problem. You can feel this distortion starting to happen. You can see this distortion starting to happen. And this happens years before, if you're working with children, this will happen years before you'll start to see the structural changes. So if a person's legs go much more easily one way to the other, it doesn't tell you what to do, but it tells you that you need to be thinking about doing something with regards to working out where that asymmetry is coming from. So what we know is, if, again, coming back to that windswept pattern, the angle between legs and pelvis, if they fall more easily to their right and you don't see as much of a response at the pelvis, they would be described as windswept to their right. If they go to the left and the pelvis doesn't respond as much, the ablap is greater on the left, they would be described as windswept to the left. Nothing we're talking about in this presentation, nothing is new to us. Like if you've been working in this field for a while, your hands feel this, your eyes see this. This is just a way of confirming what you're experiencing and what your instincts are telling you with regards to this doesn't feel right, okay? And then we can track and we can do all sorts of clever things, and we can basically do what everybody else does in healthcare, and we can say, this is the problem, this is the solution we have put in place, and this is whether or not it's working. It backs up what we see with our eyes in terms of body symmetry. And it just means that the hard work, not just of the clinicians that are involved, but more importantly of the families that are doing this stuff, and the caregivers and the support workers and the HCAs and the people that are there at 2 o'clock in the morning, it means that we're really able to celebrate their success and to kind of, if it's not working, we can sit down as grown-ups and work out, why isn't this working? Because it should be, okay? Now, there are beautiful tools out there. We worked with Changing Our Lives some time ago to develop this tool alongside Piers Baker, who at the time was working at Leonard Cheshire. It's a fantastic way. One of the things that's a bit of a problem with postural care stuff is that it's kind of out there in the ether. So who is responsible for this stuff? Nobody knows. Okay, so what we can do is we can start to use tools to pull together who is responsible for the different parts of this jigsaw puzzle. Okay, and how can we help everybody to work together and make the other people in this postural care team visible to one another. There are some brilliant postural care nursing resources. I've just said that, and then I've had a little moment where I was like, and I was going to say written by us, I was in America recently, and someone said, you need to own the fact that you're really good at this stuff because you keep putting yourself down. So I'm going to own it. Wrote brilliant chapters in all these books, so you need to go and take a look at them. They're absolutely fantastic. One of the things that we have is we have nursing teams doing brilliant work in postural care. We have OTs, we have physios. We all need to be sharing the work that we're doing across these different fields. Anna was on a call this morning and she said that the physio involved said, what did she say? She said, physios need to learn to look up because they're obsessed with lower limb function, and OTs need to learn to look down because they're obsessed with upper limb function. And then nurses, they're brilliant at looking at the whole person altogether. Right, last bit. When we think about whether somebody is safe, we think about the obvious risks that are posed, and we look at opportunities for proactive, preventative intervention. And this is for children. Okay, so we might be thinking of these danger points with regards to their age. We can think about opportunities and other things that are in place that we can start to learn more about, become part of, find out what people are doing in different places, and we can think about where the gaps might be. So whenever you see a transition, for me as a parent, whenever I see the word transition, I think a great big gaping hole that my daughter might well fall down. So whenever we've got a change in personnel, then we need to be really, really careful that the information with that person travels with them. And hopefully that, again, that consistent language is being used across all of those different settings. We could also think about this for adults. Okay, this is, I don't know, half an hour with a bit of chat GPT, thinking through using tools that are available to all of us to try to nail down the challenges that we are facing in really, really complex systems. And there are lots and lots of different tools that can help us to do that. This is just one that, like I say, took half an hour to put together, but really, really helpful. And then the last thing is about risk registers. So risk registers are used across health and social care settings to identify not only what the risk is, what the likelihood is, and what the impact might be, but also what are the actions that we're taking to mitigate those risks, who is responsible, and when will this be reviewed. And I work with probably about 60% of my work is with children and about 40% with adults. And what we can do, the way that I tend to use risk registers is I encourage parents to get this stuff written down and in one place and share that with the responsible people. Nothing that we're thinking about today comes as a surprise. And yet we are still seeing some of the same outcomes, which I think is it is not a reflection on how hard people work. It's a reflection on just how complicated this is at the moment. We all know that it's really tricky to get this right. If we can be as open as possible with regards to what the risks are, what the mitigations are, and whether we're avoiding those risks, then hopefully that's a good thing. And finally, I just want to share one person's story with you. This is Taylor, and this is my gorgeous girl here. So this is Taylor, and this is my lovely girl. And this was taken a couple of years ago. So Taylor, I started working with Taylor not because of no official referrals through or anything like that. It was a charity that had supported my daughter, and they know what I do, and they'd said, can you meet this young man because he's really struggling on his prosthetics, and he's having to use a wheelchair much more often. It's having a huge impact with regards to his confidence in school. He doesn't particularly want to use a wheelchair. He prefers to be up and about on his legs. And we started looking and we were saying, right, okay, so we analysed the body shape. We analysed the time spent in this position. We analysed whether or not without support he can adopt any other position. The answer is no, he can't. Then we look at, well, what do we need to get in place? And this is just really simple equipment that holds his body so that he is able to relax. Great communications. We have WhatsApp groups.
I've just got into bed now and I'm all snuggly.
That's him night 1. And this is him morning 1.
It was a different sleep. It was amazing.
Superstar.
Oh.
And then this is the output. Like this, sorry, not the output. I hate outputs. Outcome. An output is what you do, okay? An output is a tick box that says I've put in place a positioning system. An output is a number of face-to-face contacts. An outcome is the impact of your outputs, and that's the bit that drives so many of us to do the, like, they are proper hard yards, aren't they? But this is the outcome. And this is 6 weeks between these 2 photos. And I think one of the things that I have come to learn is that it's not just a case, when we think about supported lying, it isn't just a case of adding something new into the mix. It's a case of taking away something destructive. So people are always like, I mean, it's just a fabulous just a fabulous result and an amazing outcome. And it's, like I say, it's not just doing a good thing, it's not doing a destructive thing. Okay, that's my contact details, but it would be a bit more fabulous if I am coming to this event on the 16th of June at St James's Park in Newcastle. I get to go home. This is where my dad comes from. I'm a Brummie, so I am at home. But my spiritual home with my dad is up in Newcastle. So 24-hour postural care conference. I'll be there. Rachel will be there. Whole load of people are going to be there to try we don't have all the answers, but it would be very good fun to try and work out. Well, even if we could just agree on what some of the problems are, that would be good, wouldn't it? Okay. Done. Finished now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was amazing.
It's a pleasure.
Amazing. And thank you for sharing the slide and the 24-hour postural care conference as well. So I will send I'll pop the link in into the chat as well, so you can click on that if you want some more information and to see tickets, but also we'll send a link through the post-webinar email as well. So if you're interested in that, we can do that. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, there's a Q&A box or the chat there. I don't think with the settings of the Teams, I don't think you can unmute your mic, so I think it would just be through the chat. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please pop them in and I will go through them with Sarah now. So I think there was one that I'd come across there. So this is from Patricia. So, oh, it's disappeared again. So when an ab lap is fixed and there isn't any passive way to amend the contracture, what would you agree that providing comfort to prevent pressure areas should be the focus?
It's a brilliant question. Thank you, Patricia. So what I would say is that comfort should always be the focus, no matter what. So coming on to and it's a really good question, and I'm going to come to the ABLAP thing in a second. One of the things that sometimes we can get caught up on is the idea of, and that we talk about a lot, is with families, is progress, not perfection. So if we can move towards a more symmetrical position, then that is far better than trying to force a more symmetrical position on somebody. And one of the key indicators around that is around pain, distress, and discomfort. So the way that I think about it is that comfort is the number one. Okay, so rest and comfort. And then if I'm working with an adult and they are absolutely fixed, then 100% we are looking at preventing any, as best we can with regards to pressure and maximizing comfort. If it's so that's one thing. The other thing to do, though, is we need to be exploring, is there any way of looking at a more ambitious therapeutic strategy? So are there any times in the day where we could look at, so the thing we're looking for is as you bring the legs, as you bring the knees towards the midline, does the pelvis rise? And that's what we're looking for in terms of the positioning strategy, is where do I need to take the legs before I see the pelvis rising? And that's where you would hold the person, and that will change over time. But so it may well be that what we think of as fixed in that moment, in 6 months' time, may well be that you can take the legs a bit further before the pelvis starts to rise. So I think there is I struggle a bit with the idea of fixed, because my teeth, when I have a go at them now, they feel pretty fixed. If I had the money, I'd have braces, because that low level pressure can change the shape of something that I would think would be fixed. I'm really aware that was quite waffly. So number one, comfort. Number two, be cautious around the idea of fixed. But yes, absolutely. And the other one as well is kind of end of life stuff. If you're working with somebody who is at the end of their life, you rocking up with, like kind of, or me rocking up and, oh, I'm going to fix this, like I'm going to correct this, da, da, da. Like, it's just completely inappropriate, isn't it? It's about approaching each situation. We look wherever possible for ambition and correction, and then we come back. Usually we'll have two positioning strategies, one that's a bit more ambitious for a very short period of time, one that is less ambitious and very much around comfort and rest. So yeah, so kind of changes slightly. Is that all right? I hope that makes sense.
No, that's great. So Molly's actually asking, what is ab lap?
Okay, so an ab lap, I thought I'd got my little 1 second. Here it is. Okay, so pelvis. You can get these legs and pelvis full skeletons, Mr. Thrifty, on Amazon. And then you have to do a little bit of surgical intervention yourself in order to insert a bit of elastic into the hip joint. But they're great for helping families to understand what it is that you're trying to do. An ab lap is the angle between the legs and the pelvis. So what you're looking for is when you take the legs to one side, the pelvis responds. When you go the other way, the pelvis responds. If somebody is windswept, what starts to happen is the legs go one way and the pelvis doesn't respond. So we see the legs flattening, pelvis stays where it is. Does that make sense? So then ab lap, the angle between the legs and pelvis ends up really big. And when you try and take them the other way, they don't want to go that way and the pelvis rises right up. So it's that movement that you feel as you take someone's legs from side to side, and you'll be like, oh, you like going that way, don't you? And you're looking and nothing's happening at the pelvis. Whereas if I try to take you this way, you don't want to go this way at all, and your pelvis, comes up. So asymmetry of movement comes before asymmetry of structure. And the general picture is that we miss asymmetry of movement and we don't fully understand the risk factors. Then someone develops asymmetry of structure, and if they're unfortunate enough not to meet somebody within the MDT who knows to refer on to postural care services, then that structure becomes more and more complex. And then we end up in a situation where the person, we cannot get them into any different position. We struggle to get them into a seated position. They're in bed, not only just in bed and not sitting anymore, but in bed in very limited positions. And that's an inevitable decline with regards to their body shape and symmetry. So if we can pick up movement, asymmetry of movement, then that stuff, all of this stuff that comes is not inevitable. It can feel that way sometimes, but it's about almost at the moment a bit of the luck of the draw as to who you come across within the MDT and whether they know to go to, and then within the service, whether there even is provision around supported lying. So it's really, really difficult. And the other thing just to say as well is sometimes we see situations where profiling beds. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a positioning system that goes into the profiling bed. Sometimes it's that the profiling bed needs to be used more effectively. Okay, or the alternative seating needs to be used more effectively. So that it doesn't necessarily mean that there's more equipment got to go in. It's about that it might be that there's it might be that the equipment's all there. It's just the knowledge and the skills within the team to know how to use that equipment effectively. Is that all right?
Yeah, perfect. Have a question from Sinead asking if we're seeing clients in a significant wind sweep, is it unfortunately too late? Should we be trying Hugger/symmetric it?
Oh, that's like coming to Ford and saying, can I try a Peugeot? Come on, people. Simple stuff works. Okay, right. So my dad invented symmetric sleep, the original symmetric sleep, not the symmetric sleep that's on the market at the moment. So we come back to, it is never too late to make somebody more comfortable. All right. We are now. So we're in a position because all we do is supported lying, we're in a position where we meet people just all day, every day. And we see the most shocking situations that people end up in because people are coming to it too late. It's never too late to make someone more comfortable. That doesn't mean that there aren't hundreds and hundreds of people up and down the country who spend many years in discomfort and in pain because we are late. It's never too late, but we're often late. Simple stuff works, my love. Come on. You need to, right, whatever positioning system you use, it needs to be effective. So is it, what's it like in terms of the materials that are used? Sweat and sleep go together. People's temperature drops by about a degree and a half when they're asleep. People sweat to facilitate that drop in temperature. What's the material that's being used next to that person's skin in order to facilitate that sweat evaporating? We need to think about, can the positioning system, if you've got wind sweeping, you have rotation. And rotation, the only one that deals with rotation is Simple Stuff Works. The others are lateral systems, or you get the odd, not in adult services so much, but sometimes you'll get these custom contoured systems. Okay, so the choice of the system depends on your assessment, and it depends on the problem you're trying to solve. Okay, is that all right? Oh, Sharon Sutherland is on the call. I am honoured. No, it's never too late for intervention, but we are often late, which is a great shame.
I think that is the question, Sarah, around, is it too late? And what I would always say is that it's never too late. And if we don't protect the body, we know for sure that the destructive postures that we observe are only going to continue to deteriorate. So we're not going to, if we don't intervene, we're guaranteed we'll predict future secondary complications. So that is where we have to say, if we don't intervene, we know that things are only going to go downhill. Yeah. So we need to do something.
And Sinead, I that's much clearer. So yeah, so what you need to think about, okay, so really, really good points. So what we need to think about is, if we've somebody who, as soon as you start to lift the legs, the pelvis is heading up, then what we need to do is hold that person. Okay, what we don't want is the person just to remain unsupported. All right, so we're always looking, but we're looking to see if we do anything at the legs, what's the response at the pelvis. And we're just very careful about, if we do see the pelvis rising, we might be putting too much into here. So it's never too late to try to get the legs into a better position, but you come to that, like, obviously on an individual basis, and don't feel that you come to that on your own. So if you, the way we work here is all online. So we have just all day, every day, online calls to say, right, what's the situation? What are you trying to do? Let's see this, and problem solve it with you. When you're saying about not being able to tolerate sleep systems that are trying to be corrective, so dad passed away in December 2024. And he died on the Saturday morning. And on the Wednesday, one of the last things he said was that he had 2 regrets in life. And one was that he didn't punch a specific person, but we don't need to talk about that. And then the other one was that when he invented symmetric sleep, that he called it a sleep system. And he was saying, I just regret setting people up to fail. And what he meant by that was, when we think about a sleep system, we tend to think about nighttime, the most bonkers time that you would try to introduce anything, and for really long periods of time, and that the person's got to sleep. So one of the things that I would say is there a way of thinking about supported lying during the daytime for a short period of time to explore those different positioning strategies that I was talking about before? So I go into schools all the time, okay? And what we look for, we come off the achiever beds, and because they're too narrow, so we come off all of that, we get onto a wide plinth, or we get onto a mat on the floor, and we explore with no other constraints around the width of the supporting surface. What can we achieve? What would be a corrective strategy, and what would be a resting strategy? And then for how long? So what we do is, if we put in a corrective strategy, we then wait, we have a cup of tea, we sit about, we talk about what people are going to have for their tea, and we wait for the person to let us know, yeah, I did about 10 minutes. That's it. And then that becomes the basis of, that's where we're starting. We're starting with 10 minutes of a corrective strategy, no more, and then really building up. But I mean, I've known services that do not provide supported lying systems unless families agree that they will use them for a minimum of 6 hours a night. That's crackers. That's like, you couldn't get less person and child and family centered than that. So we start wherever the person's at. And if you're struggling with people saying that's enough now, then what's brilliant is that you recognize that and you're saying, yeah, I'm not comfortable putting this in for this amount of time. Spot on, you're absolutely right. So yeah, is that okay? Yeah, so is it Andre or Andre? Daytime position, a good start, further increase at 100%. And you can do stuff. We got kids who've got light beam projectors, and they game while they're in their supported lying. We've got a school that has something called Posture Club, and any of the children who are learning a new lying position, before we load that onto a family and say, oh, and as well as all these other things, can you just do this for us as well? So they have Posture Club, and you can watch films. They've got Joanna Grace has got 3 sensory stories written specifically for people who are learning a new lying position but want a meaningful activity while they're learning. There's loads of really good stuff, but supported lying, and then start in the day and start wherever the person's at rather than where you want them to be. So progress, not perfection. Yeah.
Amazing. Let me just check. I don't think there's any other questions in the Q&A. And I think
No worries,
yeah. So just thank yous coming through now. I think we will wrap it up there. If there are no other questions, it is 2 o'clock and we have kept you for the hour. So yeah, thank you so much. Sarah, is there anything else you want to add before you go, or are you?
Just that please don't take away from this that this is like and you've got to do this as well and nobody's doing this, and like that's absolutely not what we're here for. We completely, I get it. I get what it's like for families trying to access services, and I also get what it's like for passionate, brilliant clinicians who are trying to work, within these systems. So the more consistent we can be, the more we can help each other out, the better. And please keep in touch. Would be great. And thank you, Norma, for suggesting this. And I can't wait for Newcastle.
I can't wait for Newcastle either. We'll carry on the work, and hopefully we get to support more people across the way.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate that. I look forward to catching up with you very soon.
Absolutely. Right. See you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care. Norma, do you need me to? There you go.
You can stay on and you can see all the wonderful thank yous.
Oh,
You're awesome.